Great. So welcome. My name is Kim Cole, and I'm the Initiative Director of WEE-DiFine at BIGD. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Jenna Grzeslow, who is the Senior Program Manager at Brac USA. Hey, Jenna. Our presentation today is titled Supporting Applicants, Breaking Down Barriers to Success in the RFP Application Process. This is an interactive webinar today, so we will be using the Mentimeter questions throughout our presentation. So we'll get a chance to interact with you, but we'll also be sharing some tips and tricks and addressing some of the pain points that our applicants have articulated exist in our process. So we're hoping that today we'll be able to address some of the common mistakes and also pain points that we know of, and hopefully alleviate any concerns as we gear up for our RFP deadline. So with that, we have another question to pose to our audience today. We'd love to hear from you in one word how you are feeling about WEE-DiFine's third RFP. So please take a moment and navigate to that Mentimeter link and let us know how you're feeling today in one word. Excited, all right. That's fantastic. Enthusiastic, hopeful, great. Curious, very excited, confident. These are great words, wow. Need guidance, all right. You're in the right place. Very excited. Great. Need advice. Hopefully we can assuage any concerns today, offer some helpful tips and tricks. Anxious, okay. Again, hopefully we can address some of the concerns today. Anticipatory. All right, those are a lot of fantastic words. Let's move on to our next slide and we'll jump right into our content today. So as many of you know, we launched a feedback and reflection survey in the fall of 2021. We were eager to hear from our applicants the pain points that they experienced in our process to try to make our application process as smooth as possible. So we learned a few things. First, 85 respondents started our survey and 56 completed it. And we noted that there are a number of components that most respondents found easy, notably the proposal cover letter and 2-page CV, as well as the letter of support. However, almost 1/3 of respondents noted that our technical proposal and budget were either difficult or very difficult to complete. We also noted that participants requested more feedback, especially in the case of proposals that were not accepted, and more support in the proposal development process. So thank you so much to those of you who did complete our survey. We're grateful for your feedback, and we have integrated a number of points into our process. So we're excited to share more about those updates today. And before I dive into those, we have another question for the audience. All right, it looks like some have already gotten started on this one. We'd love to hear from you. Have you submitted an application for funding to the WEE-DiFine initiative previously? Please take a couple minutes and navigate to mentee.com if you haven't already. And we'd love to hear about your experience applying to WEE-DiFine. So it looks like so far, majority of respondents have started but not completed an application, and 2 submitted to RFP 2. Looks like no one submitted to RFP 1 thus far. All right. Thank you so much for your responses. We'll dive into the next slide. And if you haven't yet submitted an application previously, you are welcome. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to meet all of you. And it's great to hear in the chat from everyone. So I'll dive right into what's new with our process in RFP 3. So we are offering a number of new resources that we're very excited about. First, we're offering office hours. These are informal drop-in office hours with one of our team members. And this is a fantastic place to informally touch base with us with any questions. Again, these are drop in, drop out, so it's rather informal, and it's a great place to just ask informal questions and also hear about the questions that your colleagues are asking. If you'd like more hands-on support, we are also offering one-on-one coaching calls. Those are either technical or budget coaching calls with Jenna and myself. These are fantastic if you have a number of very specific questions related to your application. We are able to help you one-on-one. So please take advantage of those if you haven't already. And finally, we are preparing a couple of instructional videos to help you on some specific things. The first instructional video will be released tomorrow, and that presentation is addressing the top 5 reasons proposals are deemed ineligible early on in our reviews process. So those videos will be fantastic if you have just a few minutes but are interested in the topic. We're right to the point, so keep an eye out for those. We're also excited to announce that we're expanding our geographies of focus. So of course, we are still accepting applications from Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, but we are also expanding to Southeast Asia. If you have a question as to whether your specific context is eligible, please check out our FAQ document on our website that has an exhaustive list of the countries that are eligible for our application process. We have also updated our submission criteria. We've lengthened the technical proposal as well as the PICV page limits. We hope that these updates are more applicant friendly. And finally, we will be offering opportunities for brief feedback to all applicants that will be offered on an opt-in basis. So keep an eye out for an email from us either way. And with that, we'll jump to another question to the audience. We'd love to hear from you. What is the biggest, excuse me, what is the biggest question or concern you have about preparing a competitive application for WEE-DiFine's 3rd RFP? Go ahead and take a minute to let us know your biggest question or concern, and hopefully we'll be able to address some of those today. Budgeting, all right. We will certainly address budgeting today. Whether an academic from North America can apply in collaboration with a consulting firm on the field. All right, thank you for that. Designing qualitative proposals and sample sizes. All right. Showing measurable impact in the proposal. Research problem and budget limits, okay. Can we collaborate with other organizations and apply? All right. The concern I have is about the implementing partner and support letter and how to go about if they do not respond. Okay. Making sure I'm responding to what is being asked for. Okay. Stronger collaboration with researchers and identifying compelling case of proposal. Power calculation, all right. And consortia making across countries, all right. These are all really excellent questions, and hopefully we'll be able to get to all of them. We do have some general advice before we gear up to questions to the audience. So we'll dive into some common pain points that we see in applications, and hopefully we'll address some of your questions. If not, we'll have plenty of time at the end for your specific questions as well. So I'll dive into our next slide. So a really common inquiry that we receive is from individuals who are not sure if their proposal is a good fit for the WEE-DiFine research agenda. So we do have a very specific research agenda, and my best advice is to please read our white paper and our RFP document thoroughly before deciding whether you'd like to apply to WEE-DiFine. That's what I call required reading on our website. Those two documents are going to be incredibly helpful for deciding whether your proposal is well aligned to our research agenda. We also have some more specific pro tips from our WEE-DiFine team. First, please note that all proposals must address both digital financial services and women's economic empowerment. We do receive a lot of fantastic proposals that address either of these two components, and unfortunately, we cannot consider them further because our research agenda is so specific. We're looking at proposals that address the causal mechanisms at play between DFS and WEE, presented with a very clear theory of change. So please do keep that in mind as you're considering us. Please also be sure that your study meets our design eligibility criteria. Those are listed in specific detail by funding category in our RFP document. We also recommend checking out our project profiles available on our website for examples of the types of proposals that have been successfully funded in the past. And of course, check out our resources tab available on our website. We've developed a host of resources that we hope are very helpful to applicants, all the way from budget guidelines and a sample budget to, as I mentioned before, an extensive list of our frequently asked questions. We'll go on to our next slide. Another really common pain point that we hear from applicants is that page and word limits are too tight. So we've heard you and we have iterated, as I mentioned. We have extended the technical narrative limit to 10 pages, and the CV page limit has been extended to 5 pages. So we hope that this gives you more breathing room and ability to answer the many inquiries that we are asking in the technical narrative. We also have a couple of pro tips to help ensure that you're making the best use of those 10 pages. So please be sure to delete the instructions in the technical narrative template to free up space. You don't need to keep those in your narrative. And we recommend using footnotes or endnotes rather than in-text citations to free up some space. And lastly, we highly recommend asking a colleague to review your proposal to identify any areas that can be articulated more concisely. Hopefully that helps a little bit. And our next pain point is with regard to the budget. So I know a number of you were asking about the budget previously. One pain point that we've heard from applicants is that it's hard to budget given unknowns. And it is, you're right. Unfortunately, that is the nature of the game. But there are a number of things that we can do to make this process easier and to try to reach the most accurate estimate possible. So a few pro tips as you're going through the budget process. It is perfectly okay and recommended to go ahead and make assumptions as you do your budgeting process. Just be sure to record them as you go so that if you'd like to adjust any assumptions, you can easily come back and adjust those. Please also break down big expenses into their component parts for more accuracy and precision. So for example, if you're planning a big international trip, go ahead and break that down into its component parts of flight, ground transportation, visa fees, hotel, etc. Of course, it's possible that there are a variety of different scenarios that can unfold on the ground. We recommend going ahead and playing with those different scenarios. You can budget for different possibilities to see how they impact your bottom line. And in the event of multiple scenarios, we recommend proceeding with the one that is most likely. Of course, loop in your finance colleagues. They should be able to help. And if you're planning on subbing to a data collection firm, they should also be able to provide you with a detailed budget. One point of advice, sometimes we do receive budgets that have stand-in amounts that are intended as subawards to data collection firms. I guarantee you that we will come back with questions on this. We do need to see detailed information from the data collection firm. So go ahead and ask them for a detailed budget. They should be able to provide a reasonable level of detail and integrate that into your WEE-DiFine template. And lastly, you can sign up for a coaching call with me directly. I will look at your draft budget and provide a detailed review in advance of the actual reviews process. So hopefully you can preempt any possible pain points before it actually goes through our reviews process this time. I also have a really short demo to illustrate how I think about building budgets from the point of view of data collection. And this is just a brief demo to give you a sense of how to think through some of these things. But a big point of advice is to just start with what you know and build from there. So if you're applying to WEE-DiFine, you will certainly know how many surveys or interviews you're planning on completing. So for the sake of this demo, let's assume that we're planning on completing 100 surveys. Next, you'll want to ask yourself how many surveys or interviews can one enumerator complete in one day? If your instrument is ready or close to ready, you can actually test this in real time, but you can also make a reasonable guess. So for the sake of our demo, let's assume that it takes 30 minutes to complete one survey. But we also know that our enumerator is going to need time to travel from house to house and also need some reasonable time for breaks. So we estimate that our enumerator can complete 5 surveys in one business day. Next, you want to ask yourself the period of time during which you like to complete data collection. Maybe you have a firm deadline. Perhaps your implementation is being rolled out on a certain day and you must complete baseline data collection. Or maybe the rainy season is coming and you want to be sure to complete it beforehand. For the sake of this demo, let's assume that we have only 5 business days to complete our data collection. So with these 3 data points, we can calculate our productivity rate. We can determine that 4 enumerators can complete 100 surveys across the 5 business days. We'll likely also want to have a team leader for a team size of 5 individuals. From there, we can start to budget for so many different components of data collection, such as transportation, the number of hotel days, the number of transportation and per diem days, etc. So that's just a brief demo to illustrate how I tend to think about building budgets from the point of view of data collection. Another really common inquiry we've received is I don't understand why my proposal was rejected previously. So as I mentioned, all unsuccessful applicants to RFP 3 will be offered an opportunity to opt in to receive brief feedback on your proposal. But please do keep in mind that our funds are highly competitive, and we receive many more fantastic submissions than we can ultimately finance. So if your proposal does make it to a certain phase in our reviews process, ultimately it becomes, a game of who else applied. You're really just competing against other proposals at that point, and it's such a competitive process. So please do keep that in mind with our process. We can go to the next slide. So here's a short list of some of the most common reasons why proposals are rejected early on in our reviews process. This is not exhaustive, but these are some of the most common reasons. So first, as I mentioned previously, a number of proposals are just not a good fit for WEE-DiFine's research agenda. As I mentioned, we want to see proposals that address both DFS and WEE. We also see a number of proposals that are applying for our greenfield, extension, or pilot funding categories that are not impact evaluations. Please note that for these three funding categories, we are open to impact evaluations only. The only categories where we have some wiggle room with that are our measurement studies and our qualitative studies. We also see a number of proposals for which the causal identification strategy is not clear, or other components of the proposal, such as the intervention itself or the research design, are not clear to us. And we simply can't advance them if we can't understand these primary component parts. In some cases, a study design does not meet high standards of rigor. And in many cases, we see applications to our extension funds category that are not actually building on an existing study. Finally, we cannot continue on with proposals for which the budget raises a very high level of concern, or for which there is very low compliance with our submissions criteria. We do have a number of pro tips to help avoid some of these common mistakes available on the next slide. So first and foremost, as I mentioned previously, please go ahead and review our white paper and our RFP document very thoroughly. Those are both available on our website. And we know that the application process is time consuming. Please get started as early as you can because we know that that does take quite a lot of time to pull together. As I mentioned previously, we highly recommend inviting a colleague who is not involved in the proposal drafting process to review your work. Sometimes we're just so close to our work that we can miss some things that are either unclear or maybe not precise enough. And finally, please be as specific and detailed as you possibly can in the budget and the accompanying narrative. The budget is a really important part of your proposal, and we look for high value budgets. If you're not sure on what we mean by high value budgets, please go ahead and look at our budgetary guidelines available on our website, as well as our sample budget. We do ask for as much detail as possible so that we can understand your specific financial context and make an informed decision. And finally, we are offering a variety of resources, as I mentioned. Please join us for our drop-in office hours. Again, these are informal. They're on a drop-in, drop-out basis. So you can pop in and ask us a question, listen to some questions from your colleague, and then pop out if you like. We've already completed 2 office hours on quantitative and qualitative proposals, and we have 2 more upcoming. We'll be addressing high-value budgets on February 10th, and we'll be addressing any last-minute submission questions on February 24th. If you haven't already, go ahead and book a one-on-one technical or budget coaching call with either Jenna or myself. Those are offered on a first-come, first-served basis and are very popular, but please check out our Calendly availability. And again, these are one-on-one calls with myself or Jenna, and we'll be able to go into a lot more detail about your specific proposal and questions. In the event of a budget coaching call, I will be able to actually review your draft budget, but I do need to receive that in advance. So please also take note of the stipulations that we have included on our Calendly invites, as we do require a little bit of advanced preparation from participants. If you haven't already, check out our resources page on our website. We have a lot of great material on there, from a sample budget, as I mentioned, to a frequently asked questions list, as well as a short list of some of our favorite technical and methodological resources. But of course, if these materials don't answer your question, you can always drop us a line at WEE-DiFine@bracu.ac.bd. And I will pause there and hand it back over to the audience. Hopefully these tips and tricks are helpful, but I know there are a lot of specific questions, so we'd like to open it back up to the audience. You can go ahead and drop us a line in the chat, Or I believe we'll have another mentee question where you can drop us a question directly. Great. So what other questions do you have about the RFP process? Then go ahead and drop those into Mentee or in the chat. All right, I do see some questions, so I'll take a look in the chat. Let's see. So Gayatri says, hi Kim, we unfortunately missed out the preparing quant proposals and other sessions in Jan 2022. Will they be held again? So Gayatri, we're not planning on hosting another quantitative session. We will have the budget and last minute submission questions available in office hours, but we also have one-on-one coaching calls available. So if you have specific questions, please check out our Calendlies and hopefully we'll be able to catch you one-on-one. I should also note that a lot of the material that we've presented in these office hours is also available on our resources page. Okay, from Anjum, we have a question. For the Greenfield studies, is there an ideal ratio for grant funds spent on implementation versus research? That is a fantastic question that we receive often. Please check out our budgetary guidance document. That goes into a lot of detail regarding the specific ratios that we look for. In short, we look for no more than 10% of the budget allocated to implementation costs. I should note that we do not apply caps on any categories with the exception of overhead. On overhead, we cannot surpass 15% of the total budget, but otherwise we provide guidelines for what we consider a competitive budget. But we highly recommend explaining your particular financial context as much as you can so that we can take that into account when reviewing your budget. We understand that everyone's situation is different. From Rahul, can we collaborate with other organizations and apply in multiple categories? So Rahul, I think it will depend on the nature of the collaboration. So we do want to see a collaboration with an implementation partner. So those types of collaborations, for example, between a research firm and an implementation partner are completely appropriate. Other types of collaborations, I think I might need to have a little bit more detail to be able to address the specific question. But I'll do my best if you can provide a little more detail. And is it possible to share the Zoom recorded sessions on qualitative proposals and quantitative proposals by email? So we did not record our office hours, but we do have the presentations. We can upload those to our website for download if you like. From NT Mia about the details of the budget. So if you haven't seen our budget guidelines, please take a look at those. That's available on our resources tab. We have very specific information provided about the details of the budget. I think that document will be able to answer a lot of questions. If not, please sign up with a budget coaching call with me, or you can drop us a line at our institutional account. From Priyanka, please can we get recordings of the previous sessions? So as I mentioned, we don't have recordings of our office hours, but we can upload our presentations that has all of the content that we prepared for those office hours. Another question from Moira, can we put in a proposal as a consortium of organizations? Again, I think I need to understand a little bit more the nature of the consortium to be able to answer the question directly. So you can either provide more information in the chat, or if you prefer, you can email me or the institutional account directly, and I'll be able to answer your question. From Rukaya, is it okay to send in a previously rejected proposal if significant changes have been made? Absolutely. We love to see individuals that are submitting proposals with revisions. For proposals that have been previously submitted and are being resubmitted, we do ask that you share a cover letter of the changes that have been made so that we can quickly understand the adaptations and changes that have been integrated since the last time that we've seen the proposal. But absolutely, please do reapply if you would like to. And Lawrence, can we get this material sent to our mails? We will upload this presentation to our website as well as the presentations from our office hours. From Sonia, I noticed you mentioned that proposals must be for impact evaluations, but did not mention RCT methodology. Is there an implicit assumption that RCT is the gold standard for impact evaluation? Is there some flexibility on other approaches, such as quasi-experimental design? Great question. We are absolutely open to quasi-experimental methodologies. So a number of our proposals are RCTs, and is there an implicit assumption that this is the gold standard? That's a good question. I would say yes in most cases, but we are absolutely open to quasi-experimental designs, and we have funded quasi-experimental designs in the past. So it's absolutely encouraged and welcome. We're really just looking for the most rigorous methods that are suitable for your particular context. From John, can I book another meeting for the technical proposal coaching? I had one, but still need to make some clarifications. So I am actually going to bump that question to Jenna, who is managing our technical calls. I am not sure if we still have availability. Those have been incredibly popular. So I'll let Jenna let us know about her schedule.
Yeah, sorry about that. I appear to be having some bandwidth problems. So if you see this screen coming and going, that is my fault. My apologies. The technical calls are available on a first come, first serve basis. We do ask that, we try to allow everyone who wants one to make one before anyone makes a second call. At this point in the game, if there are any open slots open, then I would say, sure, you could make a second call. But I would have to go and double check the Calendly because all of the slots might have been full at this point. So, first come, first serve, we'd like to see as many people as possible at least once. But if all of the people who've made appointments have been served, then we are happy to meet with people a second time around.
Thank you, Jenna. I will note that I do still have budget coaching call slots available. So if you're excited to get feedback on your budget, please book a time with me. I would love to speak with you. From Tarkan, is it possible to ask a specific question on the application process to your email? Sure, go ahead and you can either, we recommend that you email the institutional account directly to make sure that you get the most quick answer from the most appropriate person. But you can also email me directly if you like. From NT Niang, what does the application committee expect from applicants? Yeah, that's a great question. It's a big question. I think, again, the best resources to answer that are going to be to review the RFP and the white paper. We try to be as clear and specific and transparent as we possibly can about what we're looking for. Beyond what's available there, and to just kind of answer in summary here, we're really looking for rigorous studies that address our research agenda. So we would like to see proposals that include both digital financial services and women's economic empowerment, and specifically proposals that address the causal mechanisms at interplay between those two components. So that's key. We also look for high value projects. So definitely check out our budgetary guidelines and our sample budget. Also feel free to come to our budget office hours or book a call with me. I can offer hands-on assistance in preparing your budget. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, from Rahul, I think this is regarding to the collaboration. I was referring to collaborating with academic institutions. We are a research and consulting firm. Rahul, absolutely, there's no reason why you cannot have a collaboration of this nature. We often see collaborations between academic institutions and data collection firms of varying natures. We are eligible to for-profit, nonprofit institutions, academic institutions. So there's no reason why you couldn't have a collaboration of this nature based on the information shared. Ridwan, can I, as an individual academic researcher, apply in collaboration with a consulting firm or implementation partner on the field? Will I need to provide any documentation about my organizational affiliation? Yeah, good question. We highly recommend applying through an affiliation with a university rather than as an individual researcher. I don't believe we don't receive many applications from individual researchers. I would highly recommend applying through or an affiliation with a university. Jenna, do you have any further comments on that question?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two components there. There is obviously there's some perks that come with being affiliated with an academic university, but I think the other part of it is the financial management aspect. So the award really has to go to an organization that can manage the funds and who can see that the funds are dispersed appropriately to fund the project. So I think there, in our FAQ page, we kind of state that we rarely would support funding going to an individual, and to date we have not. So it may, throw up some red flags, and I would strongly consider applying with an organization that can appropriately oversee the project, both the research and financial aspects of it.
Thank you, Jenna. That's really helpful. Shivi, can for-profit organizations apply for grants? Yes, there's no reason for-profits cannot apply. Please just be sure to check out our budgetary guidelines, as I mentioned, to ensure that there is a good fit in terms of what we're looking for in a budget. And of course, please do elucidate your particular context clearly in the budget and narrative. Right. And Cybele, is Jenna's Calendly filled up? When I click on the link, I can't get access to her calendar after January. I'm not sure. Jenna, do you have a response?
I'm so sorry. I don't know at this second, and I'm sharing my screen, so I can't really investigate, but I promise after this call, I will take a look and make sure that it's functioning technically and that it's up to date. So my apologies for not being able to answer at this moment, but I will definitely take a look later on today.
Thanks, Jenna. And 3 point that some applicants were retained in previous edition, please. I'm not clear on that one. Could you please rephrase that question? I'm not clear. From John, please help us have the recording of this webinar shared for the general benefit of our staff. Thank you, John. As I mentioned, we can post this recording to our website. Okay, Kamrul. I want to know a few issues. How many members can be added to the project? That depends on your particular project. So it's completely contingent on your circumstance. If you are referring to principal investigators, we tend to see anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 PIs. It's unusual that we would have a project that's competitive and has any more PIs than that. My best advice is to just clearly justify the role that each member is playing on your team, both in the budget and the budget narrative, so that we can understand why you're proposing that particular structure. Is there any research design constraints? So as I mentioned, for our greenfield, extension, and pilot categories, we are looking for impact evaluations only. That includes, but is not limited to, randomized control trials, quasi-experimental methodologies, and natural experiments. Oh, I see you have a follow-up. For example, instead of ethnography, is it possible to apply other alternative methods in case of mixed methods? Is there any constraints on which tools? we are going to use. I'm going to put that one to Jenna, if you don't mind, Jenna.
Yeah, no, I don't mind. So this is where you may want to apply in two different categories. Our qualitative funding is reserved for qualitative studies. But if you are conducting, say, a measurement experiment, but you also need to do qualitative research in order to help prepare for that measurement experiment, that may be where applying in two categories would make sense. But I think what you could avoid is applying in the qualitative category, but also trying to layer on some quantitative data collection. That wouldn't quite fit well within that defined category. I hope that helps, but happy to answer any follow-up questions after that. I did notice that there are some questions on the screen too, so I don't know if we want to pop back and forth in between the Q&A and the mentee as well.
Sure, absolutely. I noticed that as well. I know there are a couple other questions here, and then I'll bump over to the mentee screen. So a couple other questions. Can we propose implementation along with research? For example, developing an app or something like that. Again, I would definitely recommend looking at our budget guidelines. We have very specific information on implementation costs. In short, our funds are for research purposes. So the majority of your funds should be going to research. In certain circumstances, we allow a certain amount of implementation requests. Those do need to be thoroughly justified, and we ask that they not represent greater than 10% of the budget. We also do not support things like developing new technologies. Is there any specific citation criteria? Please do cite throughout your proposal. If you're citing external sources, other peers, do make sure that those are appropriately cited and that proper acknowledgement is given to the authors. Lastly, is it possible to revise the proposal once applied? No, it is not. Once you submit, that is submitted. So please be sure to get all your edits in there before you hit the submit button. All right, I'm going to bump over to the mentee screen. We've got a lot of great questions today. So our first question, we had received funding in the previous RFP round for a pilot survey and have been working on it since then. We now seek to expand the funded RCT and add additional arms to it. Would this be eligible for the extensions to existing studies? Right. Excuse me. That's a great question. It sounds like this would be most appropriate for our greenfield pool of funding. So the extension to existing studies is really for an existing large-scale impact evaluation. It's fantastic. We love to see greenfield applications that have pilot data. So I think your particular proposal would be more competitive and suitable for that category. And next question, if the potential implementing partners take time to respond by the time we submit, does it mean we are better off not submitting? So when we're assessing proposals, we'd like to see that there's a relationship with the implementing partner. Sometimes the relationship is not yet very solidified. That's actually really common. We do see that, but your proposal will be stronger if you can demonstrate a clear and committed partnership. It does not mean that if that has not materialized yet that you should not apply. We do understand that sometimes those take time and negotiation. Would you kindly share the recording as all our team members couldn't attend the session? Yes, we will share this recording on our website. How early should we consult you, Kim, before submission? So if this is regarding your budget, I would recommend booking a call with me as soon as you have a draft budget prepared. I'll be able to be most helpful if you actually have a draft budget, and you can just email that to me in advance. But really, it's up to you. If you also just have general questions, you can book a call with me. But I can be most helpful if there's an actual budget. Can we reshape our previously rejected qualitative study application into a pilot study? That's a big question. So a pilot study is going to be of a very different nature than our qualitative studies. So again, our pilot studies should be pilots of impact evaluations. So depending on the nature of your qualitative study, I would recommend, well, you know what, I'm actually going to ask Jenna to comment on reapplying with a qualitative study.
Yeah, Kim, that's a great point. I do think that those are, different enough buckets that you are kind of, you're almost starting from scratch. So if you have the qualitative data already collected that you were originally pitching to WEE-DiFine, you could use that as justification for your pilot study. But I would say that if you are applying, if you're previously applying the qualitative bucket and now you are designing a pilot impact evaluation, you're really kind of designing a new study. So you're not really reapplying with the same application, you're kind of just starting from scratch. So I don't necessarily, I think, yes, if you want to reshape it, if you feel like you have enough information and you have the tools to conduct a pilot at this stage, then by all means do so. But I wouldn't necessarily say that you're reapplying in the same sense as if you were reapplying for a qualitative grant in this stage. You may want to mention that you've previously applied, but your application this time around will likely look very different from your last application.
Thanks so much, Jenna. All right, our next question. The budget guidelines mention that expenses associated with admin costs like finance and operations aren't permissible in personnel unless overhead is less than 15%. Does that mean a budget or finance analyst would fit under the overhead rate? That's a great question. We would traditionally consider expenses associated with a budget or finance role in our overhead rate, yes. We would traditionally see that. If you, for whatever reason, have a particular circumstance that deviates from what we've mentioned in our budget guidelines, we just ask that you do articulate that in the budget narrative so that we can take your particular context into account. Right. Next is, our organization is a think tank. Do you accept proposals from think tanks or major universities? Absolutely, we do. We have a number of universities that have been awarded grants to date. How much in advance should we write to you, Kim, to book a one-on-one call for your budget? I have openings, I believe, as soon as next week or perhaps the week after. It's you should loop me in when you have a draft budget, ideally. I can be most helpful to you if you have a draft budget, and I will walk through that with you. That's how I can be most helpful. If you just have some general questions, you can also book time with me. We can talk about thinking through budgeting as well, but it's super helpful if you can share something with me in advance so that I can prepare for the call in advance as well. Okay. I think those are all our mentee questions. These are great questions. So I'll jump back over to the chat. I'm seeing 38 new messages, so we'll try to get through as much as we can in the next 7 minutes. All right. Okay. I think a number of these questions I've answered already. We have a question about the supporting letter. So our letter of support should be from your partners to indicate that they are supporting you. If you have a specific question on the letter, please let me know. We also have specific details in our RFP on the letter of support. Gayatri says she's not able to hear your voice, Jenna, very clearly. I'm not sure if you're able to increase your audio. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. As I mentioned, I'm having some bandwidth problems. Maybe if I turn off my camera, my voice will be clearer.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. Jenna's calling in from Uganda today. Another question on the letter of support. Is there a more specific question on the letter? We do have guidelines in our RFP. We do require letters of support, particularly from implementation partners, to indicate that you have a relationship with the entity that plans on implementing the intervention. Aurelia, as a university, can we form a team and apply in collaboration among us without involving another university? For example, Bay University researchers alone. All right. In theory, yes, but I think Jenna mentioned some of the concerns that arise in those cases, particularly around managing the award. So we do recommend applying through a university if at all possible. Cybelle, thanks. Jenna's calendar has been stuck for me and I've tried different browsers. Okay, we'll take a look at that after our call and make sure that that's operational. Thanks for letting us know.
Tim, can I just have one thing about the receiving, the previous question? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I guess the one thing I wanted to mention too is it is useful to have you know, the PIs or someone on the team be affiliated with the university, but in some cases the firm receiving the grant is not necessarily where the PI is based. So what we're looking for is, you know, whoever's receiving the grant, making sure that they can appropriately manage the funds, but it's not necessarily going to be where the PI is based in every situation. I hope that helps.
Absolutely, that's a great distinction. Thank you, Jenna. So we've received a few questions on the letter of support. Jenna, do you have anything to add beyond what I've noted on the letter of support?
No, I think you've summarized it really well, Kim. I think, you know, it's really important that we have those letters. It's not just to be bureaucratic, but we want to see that relationship. You know, if it's hard to get a letter from your partner, how hard will it be to work with them during the study? And I think that's really something that would stand out, is if you don't have the support from the partner now, will they really want to work with you for 1 to 3 years for a research study?
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, I think we've addressed most of these. Let's see. Do you take proposals from trade associations? We have not received a proposal from a trade association to date. We don't have any stipulations against particular types of entities applying. We really just want to see that the entity is able to execute research that's in line with our agenda. So it's not a very direct answer, but we don't have any particular types of institutions that are strictly ineligible. That makes sense. All right. The application template requires a support letter for implementing partners. How do we handle the submission process in case of the question you have answered on implementing partners? I'm not sure I'm clear on that question. Could you please rephrase? Okay. I think I've gotten through all of the questions thus far. If there's anything I missed, or if you have a clarification, feel free to drop it in the chat or on Mentee. So as I mentioned, we're able to share the presentation on our website. So please check back on our website for this presentation. Okay. Oh, there are questions in the Q&A. All right, I'll toggle over there. Okay. I think I've answered the first question already, as well as the second. Third question from Jonah, do you allow pilot studies for up to 12 months? But we previously applied for qualitative, but want to apply for a pilot. We don't have any time criteria specific to pilot studies. We ask that all of our studies are completed in approximately a 3-year time frame. A pilot study will likely be of a shorter duration. We would just want to understand why the timeline is 12 months. That would just be a relevant variable for us to understand your design and the purpose of the proposal. So just let us know why you've stipulated the particular timeline that you have. Okay, I think I answered Jonah's question, Jonah's second question, as well as the letter of support. I think I've answered Rukaya's question. There's a question regarding criteria to be eligible. So please do check out our white paper and our RFP. RFP in particular has very specific criteria outlined by financial category to ascertain whether you are eligible. We also have our FAQs document lists all of the questions we've received. So definitely check that out. You might just be able to Control F your question and find the answer really quickly in terms of specific eligibility questions. We submitted an application for an earlier RFP and it was rejected. Would we be able to get some feedback on what was lacking? Unfortunately, we receive so many applications. We're not able to provide individualized feedback at this time. That said, we have committed to offer that following RFP 3 on an opt-in basis. Is it mandatory to update the support letters used in the previous submission? I think that depends on the nature of the study. Hi, Cisse, by the way. If the letter is outdated, yes. If not, I think it really depends on the nature of the study, and if anything's changed and the relationship has changed, it would certainly help to see an updated date on the letter. So I think the short answer is yes, that would be advisable. From Lawrence, can a local CBO who doesn't have CAD certification apply for the grant? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what those acronyms are. Could you please clarify? Okay, and our last question, a letter of support may be received from partners. So your letter of support should be from the implementing partner, the entity that will be implementing the intervention. All right. And we're 2 minutes over time. I'll just double check in our chat to see if there are any more questions. I think we got through those all. If you have any more questions that we have not been able to answer today, please do drop us a line. You can drop into our office hours, or you can schedule a one-on-one call with Jenna or myself. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope we helped address some of the pain points and concerns that you have in advance of our deadline. One question I just saw, the details about the budget drop-in, the budget meeting. Okay, so our budget office hours are on February 10th. Those are offered at 2 different times. If you would like a one-on-one coaching call, you do have to book that directly with me via my Calendly. If that's helpful. As I mentioned, we will be uploading this recording to our website. So please check back if you'd like to access a recording on our website. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I hope this was helpful. We look forward to seeing your submissions, and we hope to see you during our office hours and coaching calls. Have a great day, and we hope to hear from you. Thank you.